Everyone, and welcome back to the Tiki Talk Show. I'm Ryley.
And I'm Ellie.
And today we're excited to bring you two more interviews. The first being with Mr. Jayme Blaschke from Lagoon of Mystery and A Moment of Tiki, and the second for our artist spotlight being with Dawn Fraiser.
We were really excited to talk to Jayme. He has a home bar in Central Texas called Lagoon of Mystery, which is also the namesake for his YouTube channel, which kind of started out as a bit of a build-along series. You got to see Jayme figuring it out as he went, building his own home bar with his own two hands. He has videos on there from showing you how to build a shell lamp to how to create this intricate ceiling in a tiki bar and everything in between. It's been really nice talking to Jayme about how to craft his home bar and his experience documenting that for others because, as we know, when Tiki died out the first time, it was really those home bars that kept it alive. And so seeing somebody who has that home bar space and a passion for sharing that knowledge and experience with others, how to craft their own home bar, was really awesome.
We're always excited to bring you interviews with people who are doing stuff in the modern Tiki world. But that brings me to our artist spotlight, like I said, is Dawn Fraiser. I am super excited to bring you this interview. She has been doing Tiki art even before Polynesian Pop was coined as a term. Dawn started in 1989 and has been working out of the Northwest for years and years doing so many different mediums of art, and we're super excited for you to hear about it. Dawn was a fantastic person to talk to. She was super fun, and we really hope you stick around all the way to the end to hear what she has to say.
So now, over to Jayme and stick around for Dawn. And today we're here with Mr. Jayme Blaschke of Lagoon of Mystery. Welcome.
Thank y'all for having me.
So we want to start by thanking you for coming on and having you talk a little bit about how you got into Tiki as a whole.
Okay, well, set the Wayback Machine to 2017, which really isn't that long ago. Unlike a lot of folks that you may hear talking about Tiki, they would remember going to Trader Vic's or down the Beachcomber as a kid for family, events. This is folks my age. I'm older than dirt. But, I grew up in rural Texas, and that was not something that we did. I didn't have any kind of connection to Tiki or Polynesia or anything like that. I mean, I saw the Brady Bunch episode where they went to Hawaii, and Hawaii was cool, and I watched all the episodes of Gilligan's Island, but I never really put that together as a culture. I mean, when I was in college, I somehow heard of Trader Vic's and Down the Beachcomber, so I was aware of them, but I never thought of Tiki as something that existed outside this little self-contained bubble in the 1950s. That was just completely outside my experience. So my family and I moved into a new house in 2014 that had a swimming pool, and it was surrounded by palm trees and had a large 65-foot covered patio, a place that was designed for hosting and entertaining people.
Yeah.
And this was new to us because we'd never lived any place where you could fit more than like 3 people in the house at a time without getting crowded. So, this was exciting new territory for us. And 2016, that summer, my wife and I were floating in the swimming pool, which was fantastic. We loved it. We didn't know if we would like a swimming pool. We found out pretty quickly that we loved having a swimming pool. And my wife turned to me and said, "You know what we need? We need a tiki bar." It's like, okay, because I was making really high-end craft cocktails, stuff like, rum and Coke, really classy stuff right there. So obviously we needed a bar for that. So I went online, found some plans, and built a standalone bar. Had thatch on the front and bamboo around the side, and I was feeling pretty good about myself. So I work at a university, so during the end of the year, we have a 2-week break, and I was, bored one day, and I said, I wonder if anyone else in this big wide world is as cool as me to have a home tiki bar.
Right.
And I Googled, and I found this website called Tiki Central. And this Tiki Central has an entire page devoted to home tiki bars put together by, Pixar directors and Lucasfilm special effects coordinators and all manner of people who are far more talented and skilled than I am. And I was flipping through these, and my jaw was completely on the ground. The whole immersive atmospheres that they were able to create in their homes. And I looked at my little tiny standalone bar sitting out there by the swimming pool, and I said, "Oh, you got to up your game." So that was the start of a deep and twisty rabbit hole that I have been falling down ever since. I like to say when some people have a midlife crisis, they buy a sports car they can't afford. I built a home tiki bar, and I can say from experience that the sports car I couldn't afford would probably have been a cheaper investment.
But a sports car doesn't hold as many people as a tiki bar does. So you're
This
bringing
is true.
enjoyment to the masses.
This is true. This is true. We have hosted quite a few get-togethers, and that is its own reward right there.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So when did you take the leap from trying to create your own home tiki bar space to sharing that on YouTube with everyone else of your adventures in the tiki creation world?
Oh, well, like with so many other stories, origin stories, this begins with COVID, you know.
Okay.
When I started building my home tiki bar, I just poured through Tiki Central. I combed over it, just trying to glean everything because I was never a bartender because I had never taken classes.
Right.
Okay, I had this kind of rigid mentality. You have to do this before you do this, before you do this. And then when I started getting into tiki, I read Smuggler's Cove and Beach Bum Berry. I realized, oh my gosh, you don't have to take formal classes. You can teach yourself. So as I'm building out my home tiki bar, I'm not a skilled woodworker. Everything that I know, I've self-taught either through books or watching YouTube or, just figuring it out on my own.
Mhm.
So when I started building my home tiki bar, I started a build along on my blog. Back to the yesteryear where people like went to pages that had people had written lots of stuff on and read it. So I included a lot of step-by-step stuff on how I had built or accomplished various projects. So in 2020, when everything shut down, it's like, well, I had extra time on my hands. I was still working, but we weren't going out, weren't doing anything else. And I had a friend, David Fantomatic. He ran a tiki podcast called Marooned Texas Tiki Podcast. And he had been pressing me for a number of years to start a podcast on building tiki bars. And I was kind of resistant because, I mean, to me, it is a visual thing. It's like, oh, now I am lashing the bamboo together. You can't see, but I'm promise you I'm doing this. I am
Right.
carving it this way. I'm carving this way. I'm using a router. I'm using this bit, but none of the visuals would really come through in, a podcast, a pure podcast. Now they have the hybrid podcasts that go on YouTube as well. But I thought, well, why YouTube is free? Why can't I just transfer my build along blog that
Right.
I'm working on and turn that into a video show on YouTube? And so that's kind of how it started. I have absolutely no videography background. You can tell by listening to my episodes that I have zero sound background because the audio can be pretty wonky sometimes. But again, it's mostly a visual media. So when I do the various projects, I put it out there. This is how I'm doing it. And it's not really intended to be kind of this old house step by step, but I want to share how I'm tackling this kind of a project to give the viewers who were like me, 7, 8 years ago, had no idea where to start. Okay,
Right.
this is a starting point. You don't have to do it just like I do. And I really actually would recommend you don't do it just like I do. I like to say I make the mistakes so you don't have to. These are just ways that I kind of muddled my way through to give you an idea of how you might approach building out your particular tiki space. And I say, this is just one way. There's a dozen different ways to do it, but my biggest piece of advice is, let the space dictate your build. because every space that you're working with is going to be different. And that's one of the things I like most about home tiki bars is that each one is distinctive and unique and individual.
Mhm.
And I like visiting this. Oh, what'd you do over here? Oh, you did that. That is such a great idea. I never would have thought of that. Just
Right.
seeing how people approach similar challenges and come up with solutions that are radically different from what I would have done or the next person over. And that individuality is a whole lot of fun when you visit home tiki spaces and commercial tiki spaces as well. But commercial spaces have different sets of restrictions on them.
Right. We've
Yeah.
definitely experienced that here in our own home bar, being an unfinished basement to now what it is, dealing with HVAC ducting to other utilities to naturally low ceilings. Like it's presented its own set of challenges, and we've had fun finagling a good design out of it.
Yeah.
Yeah, and
Not to interrupt you, I like the spiral design you have on your chair rail behind you.
oh yeah.
Yeah.
I have to say, I hid from spirals for a long time. I was just so intimidated. I started off doing, straight line triangles,
Yeah.
Mhm.
and I felt comfortable with that because I could use a straight edge. And people say, "Oh, I don't want to use a straight edge because I don't want it to be too perfect." Not a problem. Okay, even with that, the torque, people don't realize that the torque of a router, even a palm router, is going to pull at all sorts of stuff. And
Yeah.
no matter how careful you are, you're going to hit a knot or either a soft piece of the wood or a hard piece of the wood, and it's just going to go off on its own. So you don't have to worry about it being too perfect. And any screw ups you have, well, blow over with a torch and a wire brush, and that's going to make it look intentional. So that's great. But I was terrified of the spirals because that's completely freehand, and I wasn't ready for that. But when I started building my interior space, I said, I don't want it to be identical to my outside space.
Right.
And so I said, okay, well, I'm going to bite the bullet. I'm going to try to do spirals. And son of a gun, I love it. It's all the trim in here is spirals. I have like an episode of A Moment of Tiki somewhere where I do it, but they're delightful.
Yeah.
It's like, why did I hide from them so long? It's the fear of the unknown. I'd never done it before, so I didn't know what to expect. So I hid from it, and I'm kicking myself now, but I still do that on occasion.
Yeah.
Yeah, I have a bad habit of I when I start a project, I do a proof of concept at first. So if it turns out awful, I'm like, oh, I'm just practicing, whatever. To like kind of like remove myself from like, all right, this is the actual one. But if it turns out good, then I'll use it and be like, I intended to do this.
Yes,
Proof of
yes.
concept worked. And that's how, I mean, there's some of these like I lacquered some of them. Some of them the lacquer came on really good. Some of it was turned out a little bit light and kind of dry. I
Mhm.
torched them a little bit too heavy, things like that. And so it is a learning process. And to echo what you were saying about let the space dictate what you're going to do. I mean, I agree. I mean, I would have loved to have 50 hanging lamps and 15-foot tall clearance in it, but then, the story had to change and things changed and everything to make a cohesive environment. Like, you don't know what you're going to do until you're doing it.
Oh, exactly, exactly. Talk about ceilings. The ceiling in my space outside, it's a covered patio. I mentioned before, it's 65 feet long, 10 feet deep, and the ceiling is 9 feet off the ground. So that's a decent height,
Yeah.
but it's outside. So most people put in, lahala or, some bamboo matting and stuff. And I was thinking, it's like, well, I don't want to put that out there because uh, I'm in Texas, but it's Central Texas, so it's humid a lot of the year,
Mhm.
and we get spiders and mud daubers and insects and all. I was just like, I just could see that weave up there getting filthy, and so
Sure.
I didn't want to. I didn't want to deal with that. But then I remembered that there's an old Southern tradition, paint blue. The people would paint their front porches, the ceilings, this color of blue, and the idea was that wasps and mud daubers and other types of insects would avoid it because it kind of looked like the sky. Well, I wasn't going to go quite that far, but we have the swimming pool. I kind of decided on the name, the Lagoon of Mystery. And so it's like, okay, well, what if I paint that blue to try and simulate, create an immersive environment that we're underwater? Because a paint job would be easier to keep clean. And then once I got that on there, then I painted a darker blue silhouette of various sea creatures and sea life. And then we installed some lighting that caused water ripples to go across the ceiling at night. And it's a fantastic effect. And I would not have come up with that had I not been trying to deal with the unique situation that I was facing with this outdoor space. Now, the indoor space, I recently did an episode of Moment of Tiki, which is a much more traditional tiki ceiling. I put on reed fencing,
Right.
and then I installed a bamboo grid over that so I could hang lights and other things. And it turned out really well. My initial idea, which I abandoned because it was going to be too expensive, I wanted to get some woven seagrass rugs. You've seen them with the diamond patterns, and I've seen that used in some of the classic tiki bars. And I think that would have been fantastic, but it would have cost me like close to $600 to get that and install it. I had no idea how I was going to install it to begin with. And mine's tiki on a budget. 600 isn't a whole lot for some people, but I've got a couple of kids in college.
Right.
We watch the budget, and so I was able to harvest the bamboo myself and torch it and cut it, and the reed fencing is like $25 for a roll, so I got 2 rolls of reed fencing, put it up there, and I installed. It's looks really nice, and it was much less of an investment as the seagrass matting would have been. So,
Yeah.
I mean, there are a lot of practicalities and compromises that you have to make when you're building your tiki space, and your job as the creator is to come up with the most appealing and aesthetic way of doing it to, make it look, I meant to do that.
Right.
Yeah.
All the little oopsies that turn out to be, no, that was intentional.
Well, it's really fun if you kind of come up with an overarching story of the bar or something
sure.
like that. Like mine has a story, and it's all these like little things that are like, was that intentional? And like, it definitely was a mistake in my hand. I'm like, no, it's part of this story. I'm able to tell it to you and have this elaborate thing. And it's like, I got to write that down because I just made up all of that. And I don't want to forget it if they come over again.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So go
Oh,
ahead.
sorry.
Go ahead.
By all means.
So as you've gone through and done all of these DIY projects, is there one in particular you would say is the hardest that you've tried to accomplish, or maybe were unsuccessful at accomplishing?
The longest and most challenging was the ceiling in here because I put a lot of people are smart, and when they put a bamboo, let's see if is this gonna
Yeah, I
see,
had
that's
seen
the
the
bamboo
video.
grid.
It looks great.
Well, thank you. The bamboo grid, all those bamboo culms are 14 inches apart. I did that so that I could install jade tiles in the squares. I'm not going to do all of it because that'd be insanely expensive.
Right.
But 14 inches apart is incredibly tight. It uses a whole lot of bamboo. Most people that I know, when they install a bamboo grid ceiling like this, will, install them like 24 inches apart or even 3 feet apart. It'll be
Right.
much wider. And that looks fantastic. That looks great. But because I was going to do that, it's like, okay, well, I'm going to have to install screws into the joists in the ceiling. So I pre-drilled holes and then screwed in like 100 and something. I forget what the total number it was, which was incredibly time consuming, killed my shoulders, killed my back. Then I installed the reed fencing over the top of that because I couldn't drill and install the screws when the reed was already installed, because I wouldn't be able to use the stud finder to find where the studs were. And then I came back and I installed the bamboo, and I had to wire it together and then come back and tie it together to cover up the wires. And I gave myself premature arthritis and a bad back. And I was thinking it would take about a week. And it took about a week for me to get all the screws in place.
Oh my
It ended
goodness.
up taking closer to 2 months, working a couple hours at a time because I could not physically work more than that. So that was the most labor intensive project. The most difficult, I'm trying to think, maybe I made an awning for the end of my outdoor tiki bar. The patio ended at 65 feet and there was no roof overhang. So whenever we had rain or storms or anything like that, that entire side got drenched. Rain and water just blew in there. So it's like, okay, well, I got to do something. So I harvested the bamboo combs, torched them, screwed them together, tied them together, then installed a thatch over the top of that. And I had no idea what I was doing with any of that. And so that's actually an episode of A Moment of Tiki. It's one of my earlier ones, cleverly titled Thatch Me If You Can. Everybody loves a good pun. People love bad puns even more, I guess. I don't know. Uh, that was probably the most difficult because I really didn't know. And once I got it together initially, it was unstable. So I had to add some more struts and supports. And later on, I discovered that the thatch needed more support. So I had to add some more slats in there to thatch because the thatch was sagging down and tearing. So it's still a learning process, but I'm happy to report as soon as I got it up, no more rain intrusions on that end. I was quite surprised and delighted at how effective that simple thatch awning was on the far end. So, learn something new every day.
Right.
Yeah. So other than subjecting yourself to, your body to torment, trying to get stuff up on your ceiling, we saw that you posted that you recently got a kiln.
Yes.
Can you talk to us about that?
Okay. Well, yeah, I'd be happy to. I've as long as I've been into tiki, I've been fascinated by the mug makers and the ceramicists out there. I've watched a whole lot of Van Tiki's Tiki Technical Tuesday videos on there. I follow a number of different mug makers on Instagram. There's Coxon and Dunsel out of Houston. I've met him several times and we've talked. And there's Omar, who does incredible work out of Louisiana. I'm just amazed at their sculpting abilities and then their ability to take these sculpted ideas and turn them into drinking vessels. And so that's always fascinated me. And I've always had this kind of thought, well, what if, someday I can do this? Maybe what if someday I will have enough money to, commission Monk Tiki or, Tiki Farm or something to do a limited run for me or this, that, and other thing. And a friend of mine in Houston, Jason Graber, he has a fantastic home tiki bar called Lucky's Lanai. He's active on Instagram, so I recommend all of y'all follow him because he does a lot of really cool stuff in Houston. Uh, he posted on Facebook late one night, close to midnight, I believe, said, "Okay, I've got a kiln here. Anyone wants it? First person to respond has it." So I'll take it. Again, not knowing anything about ceramics, it's just taking the plunge. And he wrote back, "It's okay. Well, it needs some repair and some work and everything." It's like, that's fine. Doesn't matter. I've flirted with this idea off and on, so it's time to put up or shut up because when else am I going to get an opportunity like this? So my wife and I drove to Houston, spent an afternoon with Jason and his fantastic wife, enjoying some great cocktails there at his home tiki bar, loaded up this kiln and brought it home. It needs work, and it's not in terrible shape. I've seen a lot of YouTube videos, which I've been watching more lately for reasons. People restoring kilns that are in much, much worse shape. But one of the big things on this kiln, the hinge, the lid, the hinge pin was gone. There was no safety arm. There were some of those things that, kind of need to have done so it's not dangerous. A lot of the latching pins, it's a scut kiln, so it's like stacked. It's got rings that stack together instead of a solid piece, which makes it fantastic if you're trying to ship it in a small car as opposed to a pickup truck or something.
I'm sure.
So I said, okay, well, this is going to be content. So I've started slowly refurbishing it. I could, drop $500 and get all the pieces right away, or I can like spend $50 a month and get it piecemeal. And so I'm taking that latter approach. I got the hinge fixed, the lid fixed, so the lid's working well. Now, the next part, I'm going to work on the stand. The stand is kind of rusty, so I'm going to clean that off, repaint it, get it established. I'm removing all the latches on the side that hold the rings stable, and they're pretty rusty, so they're soaking in vinegar right now. Quick tip, y'all, if you have any piece of metal that's rusty, soak it in vinegar. The acid will dissolve the rust and it'll come out pretty clean. Then you can repaint it with a paint and protect it, and it'll be good as new. I've used that trick multiple times on tools and other stuff that get rusty, and it's just fantastic. It's the same principle. People say use Coca-Cola. Yeah, well, vinegar is a lot less sticky. Yeah, they're both the
There's
same.
that.
So I'm doing that. I need to order some peephole plugs for the side. I need the biggest thing that I'm going to have to do is that the previous owners, not Jason, but the people who Jason got the kiln from, larger kilns are run on 240-volt power simply because they draw so much energy to generate so much heat. Well, they didn't have a plug in their house that would fit that, so they cut the power cord off thinking that they were going to use just a regular, 110-volt outlet plug for it. It's like
Right.
that didn't work. So I get to do a little electrical work on that. But I've done some electrical work before. It's not that challenging. It's just mostly time consuming. You just got to go through the steps and make sure all your splices are good and all that. So I'm not going to be making mugs tomorrow. I'm not having any kind of drop or anything like that. But I've got some ideas. I mean, who has ever put together a home tiki bar and not sketched out ideas for this is a home mug that I want to have, and hey, this is really cool. I mean, Spike's Breezeway Cocktail Hour, he's done several mugs already, and they've really cool. This last one that was based on the tiki that he had carved, I thought was really neat. Adrian, inside the Desert Oasis room, he has had some phenomenal tiki mugs that he has put out, and
Yeah.
it's fun. And once I get the kiln up and running, which maybe 6 months from now I'll fire it up and you'll see it all on an episode of Moment of Tiki. Hey, look, I'm plugging it in and all the lights aren't exploding in my house or something, and it heats up, and look, I just cooked a turkey inside the kiln or something weird like that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But once I get it put together, I'm going to play around and maybe, do some mug designs. I don't know. I mean, I'm in my mid 50s right now. I'm going to retire at some point. I'm going to
Right.
have something to keep me busy. So maybe I'll become, uh, uh, a half-assed mug maker. I don't know. We'll see.
Artisan mug maker.
Artisan.
Small batch, because the
Yeah.
other ones didn't make it out of the kiln. So
Yeah, small batch, because people's like, yeah. So I don't know. Yeah, it's going to be a steep learning curve, but that hasn't stopped me before. I'm
Yeah.
gonna, one thing that's been great is both on YouTube and on Instagram when I've shared some of these videos of this new kiln, there have been a lot of people who do have ceramic experience that have been excited about it, excited for me, and they have reached out and said, "Hey, if I did ceramics, 15 years ago for, a decade. I haven't been in it lately, but if you need any type of advice or direction or something, give me a call." Or, someone else says, "This is what I do for a living. Yeah, I'd be happy to talk with you." I mean, just the wealth of knowledge out there and the generosity of offering so I don't burn my house down or something
Right.
like that.
Yeah.
It's been really gratifying just the number of people who are, cheering me on. I've got like a waiting list for mugs, and I'm telling them, it's like, no, I don't know how to make a mug. It's like, I don't care. I want to be on the waiting list. I want the first one you do.
That's
People are much more confident in my skills than I am. I can assure you that.
awesome.
I mean, that's what I love about the tiki community is that everyone is so supportive that they put pressure on you to not that you have to put something out, but they're just like, whenever you do it, I'm going to be there to buy it. And they're like, all right, I want it. And it's like, all right, well, don't get your hopes up. But they're just like, they keep giving you information so eventually you can do it, which is great. But then now you have a new project.
No, yeah, they say, oh, everything you do is so great. And it's like, I don't really post the failures that much. I mean, the biggest failure, I think, and it's not really a failure, but I mean, to me, it's a failure, is the very first tiki I carved, the pecan wood moai. I had a log of pecan that was split, where it's split into two branches. And so I said, oh, that looks like shoulders. And I left it sitting in the yard for several years. I wasn't thinking anything about it. Well, when I carved it, it had been bored into by multiple insects, powder post beetle, carpenter bees, and stuff. So it was riddled with holes. I found out that pecan is not a durable outside wood. It rots, and so there were big chunks, large sections that were very punky, almost cork-like. No strength left in it whatsoever. But pecan is also one of the hardest native woods that grows in Texas. So here I am with one of the hardest woods that I could have possibly chosen to carve for my first tiki.
Right.
And then it goes from this really, really hard wood to like cork. And so just all over the place. It's just so inconsistent, so difficult. And then I've got bugs coming out of it from the side. And that was not a great carving. I got better after that. I would not recommend. I'm not against carving pecan again, but I know what I'm getting into, and I certainly wouldn't let it set out so it would start rotting in places and insects getting
Right.
into it.
Yeah.
So that was, even though I don't consider that a successful carve, it's still sitting out there in my tiki bar, and you gotta start someplace, and I learned so much from just doing that first carving, even though it's ugly as sin, and you kind of got to squint sideways to figure out that it's supposed to be a moai. But
Yeah.
my other carvings since then were much, much better, and so I'm happier with my skill progression.
Again, you list it as a proof of concept, and nothing ever fails. Then
Yes.
it's testing.
Yeah, very much so. I mean, and there's a learning curve. It's no wasted effort. You
Mhm.
Yeah.
you always take away something that you learn from every project. If you're not learning something new on a project, then you're not pushing yourself enough. You're not challenging yourself enough. I could do one tiki design and get good at it and just copy that one over and over and over. But where's the fun in that? I want to try something different next time. I want to use different techniques, different tools. Most of what I have done with carving has been power tools, with power carving, using the die grinder and an angle grinder and a Dremel and other things like that. I've used a chainsaw. I've used routers. One of these days, not sure when, but one of these days I am going to carve an entire tiki just using hand tools, with the mallet and gouges and chisels. I've
Mhm.
used those for details on certain tikis that I've worked on, but I've never just gone start to finish, fully manual, fully using the chisels and hand gouges. So that's going to be a learning experience too, just building up the skill set.
Yeah. My brother fancies himself a little bit of a mountain man and sits there and just whittles with a little knife
Oh
sometimes
yeah.
on random pieces. And I think you went out and visited him and had a set of chisels
Mhm.
and we're carving things. And he's like, wow, these are sharp. Like,
Yeah, I was recovering because it ended up actually looking halfway decent. I mean, for something that I was just sitting there for 2 hours with, but I'd be sitting there and kind of like look away for a second and it would slide right over and just get me in the thumb or something like that.
Oh yeah. Yeah, it's you want your chisels and gouges to be super, super sharp, because carving with dull
right.
tools is no fun whatsoever, and that's a good way to put you off of carving forever.
Mhm.
But at the same time, this stuff is cutting through wood and wood fibers, and so when it comes into contact with flesh, there's not going to be a whole lot of resistance. Fortunately, the good news is that those are very clean cuts and they heal nicely.
Yes.
Yep. Yeah, that's actually that is the good part.
So you're talking about a tiki on a budget, tiki DIY with that budget in mind where you're not going most, I would say, like extravagant of like purchase wise.
Sure, sure.
So do you do a lot of thrifting as well, or is it mostly just DIY creations?
It's a mix. We just went to an estate sale yesterday. It was the second day of the sale, so most of the really great stuff was
Mhm.
already gone. But we came away with a nice rattan end table that I am going to sand down and refinish. We also got, tiki string lights, some a little more kitschy stuff. The biggest thing, I was really excited. The place had a menu card, like 4x4 menu card for Ocean's 11. Ocean's 11 was a tiki bar that opened in Austin, Texas, around 2000. It was open for just a little more than a year, I believe, before there was some falling out with the owners and some other stuff, and it closed. But it was one of the first of the Tiki Renaissance bars that were opening. And, wow, this opened in Austin. Of course, I didn't know it at the time because I didn't know Tiki existed at the time, but it's kind of legendary. It existed for such a short period of time. There's not a lot of ephemera of them out there. I've got a couple of mugs that they had put out through Tiki Farm, but there wasn't anything else. And so when I found this card, this laminated card, just kind of tucked in a corner that had been overlooked by everyone else, it was a jackpot because there's so little of evidence that this place ever existed. It's hard to find any photographs or anything like that. And so it's like, yay, that's just so great. Yeah. I go to a lot. Well, my wife and we just enjoy doing that on Saturdays. I have subscriptions to mailing lists. Was it estatesales.net and estatesales.org. And during the week, I will get alerts for estate sales that are coming up in my area. I don't really go too far afield. I'm located in between Austin and San Antonio. My wife and I, we don't go into Austin except for the one yesterday because we knew that there was going to be tiki stuff there. What we do is for the most part, we don't expect to find tiki. We'll look for more tiki adjacent. We will look for the estate sales that are cluttered. It looks as if someone had lived in this house for 50 years and didn't throw anything away. Because in those cases, 50 years will put you at the tail end of mid-century modern.
Yeah.
So you can find some, cool furniture. Hawaii was still a big deal back then. So there, Hawaiiana, little hula girls or plates from Hawaii, 50th state, that kind of thing. We'll find those fairly regularly, vintage ashtrays, stuff like that. But then you will stumble across something that was surprising and unexpected. I remember going to one estate sale where the deceased had probably gone to Hawaii on vacation in the 1970s. And one of the souvenirs they brought back was some tapa cloth that they had folded up and put in the garage and forgotten about. And so it was gorgeous tapa cloth, and it was frayed on the edges, insect damage and stuff like that. And they were going to throw it away, and they sold it to me for $1. It was a big thing that was folded out. And so I've been using that vintage tapa cloth for lamp building. Initially I wanted to like display it because it was gorgeous, but it had a lot of holes in it and it really couldn't be repaired. You'll find random tiki mugs occasionally because San Antonio has so many retired military because it had multiple Air Force bases, Army, Fort Sam Houston. A lot of military retire there because it's mild winters, the climate's nice and the cost of living's low. There is a lot of Asian themed materials that you find out. So if anyone wants to have an Asian themed, Korean or Japanese or Philippines, you can find a lot of that stuff because these military personnel were stationed over there years at a time. I got several peacock chairs from actually not a estate sale, but a Craigslist posting that this guy had been stationed in Japan. They would go to the Philippines on leave. He bought multiple peacock chairs that they had in their house, and Uncle Sam just shipped it back over when he came back to the U.S. and they'd been in his barn for a decade, and so he wanted to sell them. So I was, oh, this is great. I found at an estate sale two enormous 14-inch glass fish floats, and these were authentic with kanji marks on them and everything at a house that had absolutely nothing else tropical in it. Nothing tropical, nothing tiki. My wife and I had walked through there and looked, and she had found, I think, a couple of records or something and was checking out. And I said, well, I'm going to go back into the backyard and look because I just did a quick once through before. And I walked in the backyard and turned around, and there were bushes along the side of the house. And under the bushes, I saw these kind of rats. Like, are those glass balls? They were glass fish floats. I have no idea where this person had gotten them, why they had gotten them, or anything, because there was nothing tiki in there, and they had just stuck them in the backyard, and they were half buried. And I got these enormous things for like $20
That's
because
amazing.
the
That's
estate
awesome.
sale, you know, and this is not a tiki hotbed around
Mhm.
here. New Braunfels has a fantastic tiki bar now, Uncharted, which was put together by Jason Strahan, the Boozy Doodler. It's a great if you're coming through, but until a year ago, there was never, ever any tiki here at all. San Antonio has Hugman's Oasis, but that's never had a full-time tiki bar. Austin, I mentioned Ocean's 11 at the uh, turn of the century, but before that, you'd have to go back to the 1960s for Stake Island. So Texas came very late to the whole tiki scene. By the time tiki started getting to Texas, it was already dying. So that's kind of an irony since Don Beach was originally from here.
Mhm.
Yeah. You were talking about the military members bringing back, you know, the little things from their travels. And when we talked to Christy White, she said a lot of the same things, how in Alabama, you definitely wouldn't expect there to be a huge tiki collection of things, but because there is such a big military community there in Alabama, they get a lot of those Asian inspired and Polynesian inspired things because people brought them back and now they've retired or they're getting rid of them and getting ready to move again.
Yeah. I've got 2 rattan fish tanks that I got from retired military.
Right.
And I hear people say, oh, well, I don't have, I'm out in, Kansas or Nebraska or whatever. There's no tiki over here. The Midwest had the basement bars.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
That's something, we don't really have basements in Texas. And so all these people were in the 50s and 60s were, building these rumpus rooms and stuff. The approach is, if you're looking at estate sales, if it looks manicured and like it's being staged for a realtor showing or something, then that's probably not worth your time unless you see something specific that you're looking for. If it's cluttered and piled and there's a lot of stuff there, then there might be something there, but it's a numbers game.
Mm-hmm.
People say, "Oh, you're always finding everything." Well, I go to 5 or 6 estate sales and don't find anything at all.
Right.
That's fine. And that's over, a month. But then I'll find one that has, oh, well, look, this is really cool. This is a, a great print of, a hula dancer or some tropical scene or something like that. Or I will find, oh, look, it's a statue of, you know, something. Or on Craigslist, I stumbled into some Whitco stools that was it said carved Hawaiian stools. And I looked and said, oh my gosh, that's Whitco. And I got those
Yeah.
and they were covered with mud daubers. They were dirty. They'd been piled up in a garage for, a decade and they just wanted them gone. And so I was able to pay them their asking price, which was less than the price of a single of the Whitco
Right.
stools. And that turned into, a whole episode, Whitco Restoration, where I turned them in from this grungy looking thing that were barely fit for firewood. Now that's one of the centerpieces in my tiki space. So you got to have the mentality of a shark.
Yeah.
You're always have your radar out. You're always looking for opportunity when opportunity presents itself. One thing I realized though, that when I was first barely getting into tiki, I would try and buy everything I came across that was even remotely tiki, just
Yeah.
because I was afraid I would never see it again. This is my only chance. This might be the only thing I ever find. Well, there's more out there, and I am a lot more selective now. I will see something, carved tiki, or a mug, or any type of souvenir, and I'll look at it and say, oh, that's a fair price. That's a reasonable price. I don't want it.
Mhm.
You know, maybe that makes me a snob, but I'm looking for the really good bargains where people say, "Man, you robbed them blind on that."
Right.
It's kind of fun. You can see behind me, that's a Whitgo planter
Oh,
Oh yeah.
wow.
there. I found that we were doing a road trip to the West Coast. This was in one of the breaks during COVID. And so we were going to do a road trip and go to as many tiki bars as we could. And so we got to driving from Texas to California. We got to Tucson and we're waiting for the Con Tiki to open. So we were going to kill time by going to some thrift stores. And we walked into Goodwill, and this was bundled up there, wrapped in packing tape, and it said carved wood sculpture thing for 40 bucks.
Yes.
And I was like, I don't know what that is, but I know that's Whitco, so we're getting it. And we got to the hotel room and took it out, and I took pictures of it and sent it to Pleasant Tiki and say, "Do y'all know what this is?" And Heather Pleasant, oh God bless her, she's such a great resource. She said, "Oh yeah, that's a hanging planter. My neighbor 2 doors down has one. I drive past it every day." And I said, "Wow, this is great." So I got it and refurbished it and restored it, and it's hanging on my wall looking fantastic now. So you know opportunity is presents itself when you least expect it, and when you least expect it, you've got to be ready to respond, because we were in a small car at the time, and that took up like 90% of the trunk space. So we had to
Yeah.
move our suitcases and put them in the back seat,
Right.
and we had no room for anything else. But I wasn't going to leave that behind.
Right.
Yeah.
It's those unsuspecting tiki finds that always seem to be the best.
Oh,
And
it's so
that's what
much
I
fun.
tell. Oh, sorry.
Oh, go
I
ahead.
tell people that all the time is that like if you go to California or Florida, you're going to go into a thrift store, they're going to have Whitco, but you're going to pay Whitco prices.
They know what it is.
And it's
Mhm.
available. It's you can see it, but those places like like Nebraska or South Dakota, places that you wouldn't expect. Like Grandma
Right.
had the old couch. I don't want it anymore. $200. I don't care.
Yeah.
And I tell people keep hunting because that's what I do all the time. I'm on Facebook Marketplace or Craigslist, anything, and if I see something pop up and I really want it or it's a great price, like within a
Yeah.
few seconds, I'm asking them like, all right, what can I pick it up? Like it really is a hobby that you need to jump on and jump on fast.
Right. Yeah. And you'll get a feel for what you're willing to pay for something. I can't say how many times I've seen like a glass fish float come up, and it's like, okay, I've actually got a lot of glass fish floats. I know people are saying, oh, that's sorry, so and so, but I try not to be greedy. I'm not going to buy all of them, but I will reach out to my friends in various places, and it's like, hey, are you in the market for this? Take a look over here. I don't need this, but there's someone selling three glass fish floats, and the price isn't bad. So
Yeah.
kind of spread the wealth a little bit. Some people are looking for a bunch of bamboo. I've got a bunch of bamboo, but someone else is selling some bamboo over here. It's like, hey, you might want to check that out. So like anything, networking helps. I've been fortunate enough. Some of the furniture out in my outdoor tiki bar, it was spun fiberglass, which is just perfect for being out there in the weather and exposure. And I first saw it on a Craigslist ad, and oh, those are cool bar stools, but oh, it says wicker on the listing. It's like, oh, if that's rattan or something like that. If it's out been exposed outside, it's probably falling apart. And so I didn't think anything more of it. But I had a friend from Austin who saw that same ad and said, you need to jump on this, because if that's what I'm thinking it is, it's a lot more valuable, and it's not wicker. It's going to be fiberglass and a lot more durable. And I went and checked it out, and son of a gun, he was right, because
Wow.
he, knew he had been in the game for a long time. He didn't need those stools, but he knew that they would work for me. And yeah, they were painted to look like rattan, but they look like rattan, but they're not. They're fiberglass. And so I was super fortunate in that. So, you know, I try and spread the wealth to other people, and other people will tap me when they see something that they think I would like to jump on. And it's, it works. Every tiki folks helping tiki folks.
Yeah, very symbiotic relationship.
Yeah.
You've told everyone about your Lagoon of Mystery, this
Yes.
underwater tiki bar. Where can people go to see that, see pictures of it, and see what you're doing online?
Okay, well, I'm on Instagram, Lagoon of Mystery. You can find me there. I, post several times a week, different stuff. Most of it's tiki, but occasionally I post other things with, I've got, backyard orchard, and I do some homebrew and some other things. Yeah, like diverse interests. But most of it's tiki content. Or you can go onto YouTube, the YouTubes, and hunt out Lagoon of Mystery. That's my channel. I have a show on there, A Moment of Tiki. We're like at 78 episodes now, which nobody is more surprised than I am about that. I also do a number of shorts. I try and post weekly. A Moment of Tiki I post once a month,
Okay.
just because it's pretty labor intensive, and that's the most I
Right.
can manage. I do try to post at least once a week shorts, either what I'm working on, just a little quick snippet, the kiln or a carving or something like that. And I will also post, I've been doing Does It Daiquiri.
Yes.
Just
Yeah.
a short 90-second thing. I grab a bottle of rum from my collection and set it down and say, here's a random rum. Let's see if it makes a decent daiquiri or not. So far, most of them have been decent daiquiris. Occasionally, there's one that's like, no, I would not have this as a daiquiri again. Use it for something else. But, it's kind of fun, silly, quick, not too difficult to do. And hey, I get a daiquiri out of it. So, what's not to love?
Any excuse, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And, personally, I think, in my opinion, the daiquiri is the platonic ideal of a cocktail. It's just so perfect and balanced. There's not much you can improve on it in any way, shape, or form. I mean, some people may prefer martinis. Some people may prefer Manhattans. Some people might prefer, I don't know, but as far as I'm concerned, a well-made a well-made daiquiri, it cannot be improved on as far as a cocktail goes. It is the absolute pinnacle of perfection.
There's
Yeah.
always the ever elegant Jack and Coke or rum and Coke.
Oh
and-
yeah. Well,
Yeah.
I mean, of course, that's a whole different level right there. But we have friends, and we say, oh, we're gonna go home and make some daiquiris, and they say, oh no, I can't drink anything that's sweet and slushy. And
Right.
no. We're talking real daiquiris, not the frozen daiquiris that you would get on Bourbon Street or something like that. We're
Right.
talking about the real thing. So
Yeah, I've explained that to some people before, and I never try to take, well, that's a lie. Sometimes I take the high horse, and I'm like, well, a daiquiri. Then other times I'm like, listen, no, it's not what you think it is. Just try it. It's probably going to be good.
Yeah.
But, well, perfect. Well, we really appreciate you sitting down with us and talking with us.
no, my pleasure. Absolutely. It's a lot of fun. I enjoy listening to your podcast.
Thank you.
I enjoy,
Awesome. Cool.
Awesome.
Well, thank you so much.
hey, my pleasure.
Cheers, everyone.
Thank you again to Jayme for joining us on this week's episode. We had so much fun talking about not just your amazing home bar in Central Texas, but the videos you've created, your passion for tiki, sharing it with others, and everything in between. So thanks for coming on. And now on over to our artist spotlight with Dawn Fraiser. We had so much fun during this interview, and I think it definitely shows, especially if you're fortunate enough to be watching the YouTube version. You can tell Dawn's infectious personality just from her smile.
It was nothing but laughs. Dawn is an artist. She has done almost any medium that you can think of. So in the interview, you're going to hear us talking that Dawn has been active in the tiki world since 1989. And like I said in the beginning, that's even before Polynesian Pop was a coined term. But Dawn has been there. We talk about her art, but we also talk about her stories. We talk about her attending the Exoticon 1995, which was one of the first real tiki revival events.
Yeah.
And we just enjoy talking to her. She, like Ellie said, she just has a fun, infectious personality, and she has so many amazing stories. We're going to post some pictures as you're watching this, if you're on YouTube, of her art as we're talking about it, and we really hope that you're going to enjoy it.
Absolutely. Dawn's done some amazing lagoonscapes, as she calls them, that just have this beautiful, serene feeling to them. And she designs her own fabrics to create aloha shirts. She's definitely very versatile and accomplished. But more than anything, she's a fantastic storyteller, and she has the history to tell those stories. So be sure to give it a listen, and we really appreciate Dawn for coming on.
Again, we hope that you enjoy listening to it as much as we enjoyed bringing it to you. Without further ado, over to Dawn.
Ellie?
And today we're sitting down with Dawn Fraiser. How are you doing?
I'm good. I'm so happy to be here.
Thank you for joining us.
We are super excited to have you and be talking with you today. And we were talking a little bit before the show. I mean, you have some longevity in Tiki, and even before the Tiki scene, you were there. And so you started in Tiki in the late 1980s. The first thing I want to ask is, how did you find it? And then how did you get started in making Tiki art?
Tiki found me. And I resisted Tiki for a really long time, even though a bunch of my friends told me I should be into Tiki. And when I lived in Fremont in the 80s and through like the mid 90s, that was when Archie McPhee's was in the neighborhood, and they had like a little espresso cart in front of their store, and they had Tikis.
Yeah.
So that's like one of my sort of relevant memories of seeing Tiki, even though I could go back to the 60s and the 70s of being influenced by Tiki, just like a whole bunch of other people, you know. It's like, oh, we used to go to Disneyland when I was a kid, only we didn't have that in Montana. So anything Tiki was really hard to find. And when I did see it, it was like, ooh, that's cool. And like when I first started making Tiki art, reference material was impossible to find because it was pre-internet and pre-people uploading their collections, or you know, the urban archaeology of it all. When I lived on the beach in Fiji for a few years in the mid 90s, I was really super influenced by the Tapa designs, Fijian Tapa. And Tapa is still my favorite thing. I did a book, like a copyright-free design book on Tapa, which has never been published, and I still think it's super cool. So at some point, I'd like to like get that one off my list.
Right.
And then being into Tapa and like working within that subject matter and my vision of like taking the patterns and changing the colors so they're like bright colors and stuff, that led me to being like really doing my first Tiki stuff, because things with actual Tiki faces in them, right? And it took me a long time to like sort of find my niche of what I want, how I wanted to express my Tiki, what it was for me. So Otto found one of Otto's friends was in Fremont when I had a little show up in the window of the art supply store in downtown Fremont. And he like contacted Otto. He's like, look, there's these Tikis here. And then I heard from Otto. And from there, he did a little Tiki news issue on me. And I hit Exoticon, the very first Exoticon in LA, 95, right? 95. Thank you for that, because those dates are so long ago that I'm like, if somebody asks me, but I'm like, I know, mid-90s. I have no idea. That was a lot of pot ago. So funny. And then from there, it was the very first group Tiki art show. There was 3 West Coast artists, Bosco, Shag, and me. None of us sold anything. Nobody knew who we were. And that was right about the same time that Beach Bum Berry put out the first grog log. And so of course, then it was like every little thing that you could get your hands on, you collected. And I have the very first grog log
The
with
spiral
like
bound and everything?
pre-stapled,
Really?
pre-spiral bound,
Wow.
stapled in the middle. Yep.
Wow.
And I just kind of let it ride for a while, thinking, no, this was cool, but maybe it's not ever going to go anywhere. And I just kept at it, and it turned out that tiki is my life's work, because I have had more ideas than I know that I can complete in a lifetime, many times over. That I'm just like, oh, if I had like a year and all my bills were paid and I didn't have to like hustle like aloha shirts and stuff, I could just spend a whole year just trying to catch up on stuff I already thought of.
Yeah.
Maybe even longer. That would be great.
You know, so it's funny. I mean, on the show, I've mentioned multiple times about tiki creep. Is that like at first you're like, I don't know, maybe this is tiki thing is kind of cool. And then you go from there and it keeps creeping into your life until, it kicks open the door and it's like, this is your life. And I was just reading through something recently and I read a quote by Carl Vorman, German research who said, talking about tikis, once you've seen them, you are haunted as if by a feverish dream. And it sounds like you got bit by the tiki bug, kicked open the door, and then now here we are. And so I want to circle it back around to something that you said. And so Exoticon 1995, I've talked about this, that's the first, not only the first lounge or Exotica music festival that was ever put on, and this is separate from the modern Exoticon that's held in LA.
Right.
Right. But that is an extremely fascinating event. Do you have any specific memory about what the event was like, or vending there, or the crowd, anything? Because I think it drew over almost 1,000 people that night.
I didn't vend, and I'm a totally socially awkward nerd, so I'm kind of always standing around the corner watching everybody. And I liked the venue, which was like this, I can't even remember the name of the place now. It's been so long, but it's this really old LA hotel, and this big ballroom, a couple of big ballrooms, and it was just a really neat place. It was neat to be there. It was like a totally new experience for me to be around stuff like that. And it was very surf music oriented, of course. And I'm a surfer. Yeah. I'm like a old school longboard surfer. And so that really was a big draw for me, was how all the tiki and the surf music, how it all tied together. And I thought it was really neat.
Yeah.
I don't remember. I mean, the vendors were like, it was like mostly people doing their CDs. There was like, nobody was vending art, of course. So it was like CDs and t-shirts and just like that kind of thing, right? But there was no art vending, and art vending for tiki event was a non-existent thing at the time. Like that, I don't think it even occurred to anybody to do stuff like that. And then in the other side of the venue was the stage where all the bands were, and most people were hanging out over in there, and it was like dark. And the big presence that I remember was the Cacophony Society. So I think they're probably the ones who maybe did cocktails. I mean, I can't really be super sure. It's just so long ago, and I'm pretty sure I was barely paying attention, to be honest. It was just like overall a really neat experience to be there.
Yeah.
Wow. So you talked a little bit about your time in Fiji and just, seeing those little tikis around and getting them embedded in your brain. Where do you draw inspiration for your art? Is it, that time in Fiji and the tapa designs, or is it something else entirely?
Me, 100% me. I purposely do not follow other artists. I don't pay attention to what other artists in the scenes are doing. I'm not influenced by previous artists who classic artists from excuse me,
Mhm.
mid-century. If you look at pictures on my Instagram of my house, I spend all my time at home. I work at home, and my biggest influence is me and my own brain, and just how I want to work on my projects, interpret what I do. It's a never ending supply of imagination that I happen to have.
That's amazing.
So I'm not really like, I'm only in, I purposely only try to be my own influence just to see where it goes. Why not?
Yeah, very unique.
Yeah, absolutely. And so I, quick plug for Ray Weiland, but I read back through an article of his about you a long time ago, and he came over to your house. I think this was 2017, I think 2016, 2017, and he took a number of photos. And your house is, I mean, you walk in, it seems like you walk back to 1966. It seems like you have a lot of
It's
mid-century.
so much more now. It's
Really?
so much more. Have you guys seen the book Polynesiacs, Tiki at Home?
Yes.
Okay,
Yeah,
so the cover, that's my living room.
Really?
Really?
Yeah.
That's
And
amazing.
I never put that together.
I'm constantly working on my house. That's why I don't hit events and stuff anymore. Is like because that's always in the summer. And if you vend, you're spending all your time creating inventory, and then you're spending all your time and money hitting the events, doing that like whole circuit and stuff. I'd rather stay home and work on my house.
Yeah.
Fair
And
enough.
just
Fair
like
enough.
keep making it cooler and cooler and cooler. And I bought a fixer like 20 years ago, over 20 years ago, and I'm still fixing it.
Fair enough.
I'm still working on my house.
That's the way it goes.
When we
But
bought our
if
first
you-
house, we didn't anticipate how much work went into being a homeowner, for sure.
Oh, right. Right.
You tackle
And
all
then
of like, sorry.
your spaces on top of all that.
I know. I mean, I was sitting down here, like learning how to do framing and like, how do I finish a basement? Oh, the gutters are leaking. Okay, I guess I have to fix that now. Like it draws you away from when you really want to be making some tiki space.
Yeah.
So
Oh my God. I try to do one major house project every single day. So I'll spend like most of my time sitting in the studio, and when I like get chair butt and I have to take a break, I get up and go outside. Like today I built a fence. And next month I'm gonna rubber coat the roof. Last month I replaced my hot water heater. It's like this is a constant, it's never ending.
yeah.
Always.
So circling back, I mean, we've talked about it a little bit, but you got into tiki in the late 80s. So you're in the Northwest, you're in West Seattle right now, and so a lot of people are surprised to hear about how early Seattle got the tiki scene. I mean, Trader Vic's opened the Outrigger in 1947, I believe, somewhere around there, 1947, maybe a little bit earlier. So I'm curious, in the late 80s, what did you have access to? I mean, you talked about remembering tiki in the 60s or 70s. Was there any bars or anything that you went to or anywhere you could like comfortably see it?
I remember Trader Vic's at the Westin in downtown, and I never went in there, but I peeked in, and I was all like, I don't think I'm supposed to be here. I never actually went in there. So I haven't told anything. I thought I wasn't allowed to be there for some reason.
Funny.
Yeah.
I told you I'm a socially awkward dork.
It's tiki telling you it's not your time yet. It's like the creep hasn't started. You have to wait, and then when it picks you, you're in. So you saw a glimpse, and it said, "Okay, well, one day."
And I know people who have giant chunks of that stuff, and they're like hoarded away in a warehouse from when that location closed. And it was cool. That was a really cool spot. But even just like going to little dive bars and stuff that were tiki, it wasn't, I was like, yeah, this is cool. This is cool, I guess. But
yeah,
it still didn't really get it. When right about the time that Otto was doing Tiki News, he came up here and we did this whole Pacific Northwest urban archaeology expedition from Portland up to Vancouver, and we hit like every tiki spot that was there in the mid 90s we visited and documented. That was a really fun adventure.
I bet. And is there one you remember standing out among the others, or?
It's that place that's in Vancouver that's so beautiful. God, I can't even remember what the name of it is.
Is it still around?
It is, I think. Okay, God, I can't even remember what the name of it is. But they have this beautiful, beautiful bar with this like blue backlit bar thing that's all curvy, and they have these great like fake palm trees, and it's very Carmen Miranda movie set.
Yeah.
That's fun.
Well, you know, if a listener right now knows the name of it and is screaming in their car going, it's this. Just comment it. Yeah, don't need to get into a car crash. Just comment it, you know, and when we get that, we'll send it over to you. So then we all go, oh, that's the name of the place.
And also that trip was the first time I got to go to the Alibi in Portland.
Yeah.
And Java Jive in Tacoma, which is the teapot shaped building, and it was all like jungle themed inside, and they had monkeys and stuff in there. And I have a pretty good one of my favorite pictures of myself that Otto took was in the bar at the Java Jive.
It's funny because I think one of my very early memory of mine, I think I was driving around Tacoma with my grandmother, and I remember seeing that place and just it's from another world. Like it is not anything like you would see. I mean, like people underestimate the Northwest for mid-century and a lot of like these very oddball places, but they're out there for sure.
We used to have so much more just goofy stuff like that, and on a lot more places that had Whitco. Do you remember the Twin Teepees that used to be in Green Lake? Like their whole interior was Whitco, like Northwest native, like totem poles and stuff, like cheesy totem pole, but Whitco. It was really cool.
That's awesome.
Cool.
I bet.
And that place is long gone.
Yeah, of course.
The way Seattle has been like aggressively gentrified in the last decade, we have lost so many iconic Seattle mid-century googie architecture places, and it's just very boring.
Yeah.
My house is cool.
We have a vestige of a true mid-century fanatic, a true tiki artist. At least you keep the flame alive.
Yeah. Not being Seattle, Ryley will talk about these places going away. And to me, they don't have as like visceral of a connection because I didn't grow up with that. But he'll be like, no, they took the Cinerama away. And I'm like, that's terrible. Like,
right.
And he's like, they saved the Cinerama. And I'm like, woo!
Yeah,
cheering. And that's the reason why, I mean, I tell people.
Cinerama needed to be saved.
Oh, I know. Jeez. Sure. Again, I apologize.
That place is really cool.
I think, I mean, this is our third episode with a Northwest native on, and it sounds like this is just like the Pacific Northwest Tiki Talk Show at this point, because I'll be dropping names of places. If you're not from the Northwest, you'll just go, oh, cool, nice. But if you're listening, I'm telling you, head up to the Northwest, hit Devil's Reef, but then go along and check out all of the great mid-century stuff. It is still there while it is still there.
Yeah.
Appreciate it now.
Exactly. There's not much left, actually.
Yeah.
I mean, what Seattle, as far as the tiki scene in Seattle goes, it's really all about home bars. A lot of people have really great home bars. And we have like a handful of bars that do tiki. Of course, Devil's Reef would be number one. There's a cute little tiki bar at the Junction in West Seattle at the bowling alley. And I went there for the very first time, like about a month ago, because we had an event. We had a little scene event called
Wow.
Tiki Palooza at
Nice.
Tavern White Center.
That's so fun.
And I did vend that. And of course, and to me, the best part about vending, first of all, I'll do that vent because it's just like a few blocks away from my house. Cool, I can do that.
Yeah.
But the fun part for me is making all this stuff and making the display and getting the pictures. But really, nobody bought anything.
Yeah.
Which really, and every year I do it, I try to change up what I present. So it's just kind of themed a little bit different every year.
Yeah.
And that's fun. It's fun to work on all that stuff. And then I've like built those things and those like display props, and I just sort of set them up in my living room. So if anybody ever wants to come visit me, all my stuff's set up in the living room.
That's so
Careful. If that counts as invitation, we'll be buying our tickets very soon.
Well, next time you're in Seattle,
Yeah.
you're welcome
absolutely.
to come visit. I love me some house show and tell. That's fun.
We're excited for it.
So we've seen a lot of your art, and you have a combination of paintings and visual arts, but you also do some textile work and like fabric and wearable arts. Did you start with one particular medium and progress, or have you always just been very multi-talented?
That just sort of evolved.
Okay.
So I was always a watercolor painter.
Okay.
And because my mom was a watercolor painter. My mom is a famous watercolor painter in Montana in the 70s, and she taught watercolor to senior citizens. And so I grew up learning all that stuff. And, you know, as a kid, I was, what are you going to be when you grow up? I'm going to be an artist. You can't be that.
Watch me.
Like, I'm super defiant. Exactly. I'm all like, oh, yeah, watch me.
Right.
But in high school, I always wanted to design fabric. And of course, in the early 80s, there was no way for somebody like me to possibly even like get into something like that. So when Spoonflower first started, I like jumped on that. And once I designed my first couple of fabrics, I was like, oh, I was hooked. Oh my God, this is so cool. And I just went off on there. And then I started making shirts, aloha shirts. And that's all I do. I would just make shirts. The men's shirt and a tea timer, and that's it. Nothing else, nothing fancy, just shirts. But it's a way for me to get my fabrics out there because they're not all publicly available. So I like have a limited selection of fabrics that just anybody can go on Spoonflower and buy, but all the really cool stuff you can only get if you buy a shirt from me.
That's awesome.
And I make rugs. I do rugs, which is called Rugzotica. And it's super time consuming to hand tuft a rug. Not like how a lot of people are making rugs now are using a tufting gun. So they're like, it's like a power tool. And I'm doing it by hand. Oh, really old school. So in the 70s, there were these stores in malls all across America called rug crafters, and you could go in and you could buy like a burlap printed with a design or a picture on it, and you get all the tools and the supplies, and you pick out all your colors of yarn. You get everything you need to make your own like little shag rug kind of thing.
Wow.
Oh,
well,
cool.
I started finding those tools in the thrift store, and I have a dozen of them, right? And how I figured out how I was going to do tapa designs in rug form was because I had my parents' white wool shag rug they grew up with, and I trashed it, man. I trashed that thing. I'm like, and I felt so bad. I'm like, I gotta figure out how to make another one. And then I'm like, the light bulb went on. I'm like, oh my God, I could do this in tapa. Because you always see people with these like amazing collections or home bar spaces, and then you look at the floor and they have like a rug that's like totally wrong. All kinds of wrong. Like nobody.
I'm guilty of that right now.
But all that led to my overall concept of how I want to present my version of tiki more as a coherent design aesthetic. And not just, oh, I just like make tiki masks, or I just do painting. It's like every single thing I do, from the Moodzonaka lagoonscapes to the fabrics and the rugs, and it all goes together. I can move pieces from room to room in my house and make it all matches. It all goes together. And I love that. And I don't really see anybody else in tiki doing like this like fully comprehensive aesthetic.
Yeah.
Which is separate from like how people who build home bars will like this. These are all the standard things that you need for your home bar, and this is how you put it together, and this is what you do, and this is the stuff you're supposed to have.
Right.
I'm just off in my own world here.
Well, I think you hit on a fantastic point, because you look back in the 1950s, they had tiki everything. You could buy Polynesian masks from Oceanic Arts, and you could buy tiki branded rums and whatever you wanted. But then it's also all the small details about, like, you could buy, and it's not even just bar related stuff. It's, there was tiki motels and apartment buildings and homes, and you name it. There was something in the mid-century that probably appealed to the Polynesian fad that was going on at that time. And so you kind of hit on a really big point that we hope to answer here on the show, is that the trends from when you first got into tiki to now, specifically about art, because right now, Sven talks about this pretty often, is that there's more people making tiki mugs than there were ever in the mid-century. And we're curious to just see, are there any generalized trends that you've seen within the tiki art scene, or how things have developed since you've gotten into it?
Well, what I notice in trends is more about how people see tiki, and how they do tiki. So when we first started, it was really more about urban archaeology. And it's like and thrifting all the, what did you find thrifting, and the ephemera, collecting ephemera, like the bar menus and all that kind of stuff. And as it's progressed, it's become more about cocktails, way more about cocktails. So when we started out, it was about the aesthetic, and the cocktails were like the side note. Now it's about the cocktails, and the aesthetic is the side note.
Yeah.
And that is how I have seen tiki evolve. And I have seen tiki evolve. Like, I saw the quote from Ray. I saw Ray's quote. How there are a lot of people who want to justify tiki as this mashup of everything. Well, tiki's an eye beholder, and it's anything you want it to be. And I disagree with that.
Yeah.
Sorry to say. Because I think tiki is very much defined as a certain thing. And that is not to say people can't be into whatever they want to be into.
Absolutely.
Be into monsters, be into goth, be into all this other things. But trying to make it fit, like calling it tiki, that's like square peg in round hole, right? Yeah. And it's just trying to justify what you want to be into. And I also realized I cannot say that, because what I do, my version of tiki, somebody else might go, oh, well, that's not tiki at all. And in fact, when Tiki Central first started, what I was living in Fiji. So I kind of missed that whole thing. But when I got back and I finally got onto Tiki Central, a lot, and those early things, a lot of those people would say that I'm not tiki. I wasn't tiki enough. Because my stuff came in colors, it wasn't all browns.
Yeah.
I'm still doing the exact same stuff I did 30 years ago. And now I'm considered a purist. So it's not so much that trends have changed, it's attitudes and perceptions have changed of what tiki is and what tiki isn't. So really, that's why I say there's multiple universes within tiki, because everybody's coming at it from a different perspective. So apparently that's all good. That's all good. I'm not going to tell somebody else how to tiki, just like I wouldn't want somebody else to tell me how to tiki.
No, and I absolutely agree with you. I mean, I hold probably a very similar view to you, is that, there's certain imagery, there's certain iconography, there's certain ways to do it, and that's what I believe, and I do believe there's certain things that get a little too out there for my taste to say, okay, I can probably accept that as tiki, but, regardless, you know, that's what I believe too, is that, the focus has changed to the cocktails because
Yeah.
now we have access to them. And, Jeff Barry talks about this all the time with that tiki grew up with the craft cocktail scene. Tiki grew up in the shadow of the craft cocktail
Yeah.
scene. And now almost tiki
Yeah.
rivals the craft cocktail scene, and it's almost flipped. So it is very interesting to see
Oh, that's
that.
really interesting.
Yeah. And it's one of those things where it's, as taste change and focuses change. I mean, Oceanic Arts is gone. It's very hard to do a very properly themed tiki bar. There's a lot of people who do them, but
it takes a lot more intentionality.
Yeah.
Right. And you're sourcing all of your materials from different places instead of just going to one place and going, oh, okay, well, here I can get everything I need. Ow.
But you go to your you go to your liquor distributor and you have everything there.
Right.
Yeah, that place was so cool. I was fortunate to be able to go there and know those guys. And one of my longest friends in Seattle, her dad, Chuck, went to high school with those guys.
Really? Wow.
Yeah.
Hey, again,
small world.
The tiki world was creeping up on you the whole time, and eventually it said, like, you peeked inside Trader Vic's. I said, not yet, and then kicked open the door.
Not yet. Oh, and where? Go ahead.
No, after you.
Well, I was going to say where I'm at now with, like, as far as influence is I am really interested in, like, prehistory and ancient history and how iconography, there are similarities in between, like, ancient history iconography across the globe. And I think it's really fascinating how, like, something in Turkey can be really similar to something in the South Pacific. And I just think that's super, super interesting. And I also think that we totally haven't, like, solved the mystery of Easter Island.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think there's more to it.
We're hitting some hot takes now. We're hitting some tiki conspiracies now. We figured it out.
And I don't think it was aliens. So there.
Okay, good. All right. As long as we're keeping it terrestrial for now.
Aliens.
Yeah, this isn't an extraterrestrial podcast. Maybe if we did that, but unfortunately we're keeping it here on this planet for now.
Right. Yeah. No, I don't think it was aliens, but I think there's more to the story than what they think they have solved or figured out. I don't think they're right yet.
That's fair.
Going.
So where can people go to see your art, buy your Aloha shirts, and all of that good stuff?
I have very limited online presence right now. Like, I did sell shirts and prints through Etsy, and then my Etsy became unfunctional. So, and I don't have a website. Best place to see all the eye candy in one spot is my Instagram, Dawn Fraiser Artist Official. And that's where everything gets posted there first. And if you see something you want, you just comment dibs and I will message you.
That's amazing.
So, it's all, everything I do is like a one-off, handmade. I'm not like mass producing anything. And I really like it like that. I like it like that. I like to just like, okay, well, this is what I made today. Let's see if anybody wants it.
Yeah.
It just, so very, very low key, very simple, really easy. And it doesn't go beyond me. It's like, I am the sole employee of my creativity.
Yeah.
Like there isn't anybody but me, and I'm wearing all the hats. So I just do what I can do. And until I meet that one person, that one right person who can, like, sort of be a studio assistant for me, even if it's from afar and part-time, or even I just get like one day's worth of help doing some stuff to get like I'm so far behind on like participating in 2025. I'm still participating in like 2017, basically. I got
You
that
need the
far, and
Leroy
then
to your
I'm just
Bob.
like, I'm sorry, what?
I said you need the Leroy to your Bob from Oceanic Art.
Oh, really?
Yeah, you get that, and then
do.
back and forth, and then all of that stuff. Yeah, we're getting it out the door today. Well, this is fantastic.
Right?
And we appreciate you sitting down with us. This was absolutely fantastic. And we, again, check you out on Instagram. If you haven't seen Dawn's work, it's fantastic. It is super cool. And we really appreciate you sitting down with us.
Oh my gosh, I'm so honored that you asked me. Thank you for including me. I really appreciate it.
Of course. All right. Aloha, everyone. Thank you so much.
All right. Bye.
Thanks again to Jayme and Dawn for sitting down with us on this episode, and we hope that you enjoyed listening to it as much as we enjoyed bringing it to you. As always, you can find all the social media and where you can find our guests down there on the show notes, but you can find Jayme at Lagoon of Mystery on Instagram and YouTube, and you can find Dawn at Dawn Fraiser, Artist Official on Instagram. And if you're interested in buying some of Dawn's amazing artwork, it's as simple as sending her a message on your social media of choice, or as simply as commenting dibs underneath one of her posts.
You can always find us on Instagram at the Tiki Talk Show or Kona Cove _Home Tiki Bar, or you can shoot us an email at thetikitalkshow@gmail.com.
We always love hearing from you guys, so if you have some nice words to say, go ahead and send it over and DM, comment, whatever else you prefer. Of course, we love hearing from you guys. I will say we do have another path for you to do that as well. We recently started a private Facebook group called The Tiki Talk Show, which you can find under the group section on Facebook. But if Facebook's not your choice, go ahead and on any other social media, like, comment, subscribe, all the other stuff that people like to say. We just want to make sure that we're putting out content that you're enjoying, and we love hearing from you guys. So with that, it was good talking to you.
Bye.